Hello and welcome to the Swear Jar. Normally we're Super Tansky, but tonight we are joined by aidThompsin. Thank you very much for stepping in at the last minute, Aid. You are an absolute bloody legend. Tan can't make it tonight, and she's a bit upset because obviously it's a bit of a big news day.
It's been a day, hasn't it?
What's been your favourite bit so far? So we've had Braverman's been given the back heel. That's quite exciting.
Yeah.
Andrew Jenkins has spat a dummy out the pram and she's calling for Rishi Sunak to step down. We've had Steve Barclay's been demoted from NHS. Theresa Coffey's been sacked, or apparently she resigned. The big news being that David Cameron is back in frontline politics. Is this?
Yeah.
Did you have that in your I don't know, reshuffle bingo?
No, I didn't. I did not see this coming at all.
Did anyone see this coming?
I'm sort of the mind or belief or expectation that when people step down from, like, you know, the top job in the country, arguably, right? That then they retire with dignity. They go off, they write a book, they do the speaking tour, they do the sort of Blair stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But then to re-emerge and come back in and sort of work to be subordinate to the guy who's sort of, you know, 2 or 3 prime ministers down the road. I don't know. It just sort of feels like to me, it reminds me of like, you know, when Robbie rejoined Take That for that one tour, you know,
and
it was a bit like, you've already, like, you went solo, you went and you've done your own. Like, why are you coming back for one to do this thing?
I didn't know that. I would have got tickets.
Yeah, man.
Oh man, must have been while I was away.
I got Robbie on the mind because we're like midway through this documentary on Netflix about him. But yeah, it's like, to me, it seems weird that you like, what's in it for Cameron? Like, why is he back at this? Like, did he forget to shut down a hospital? Like, what's going on? You know,
it's really embarrassing for the Tories though that they've got 350 MPs, elected MPs, that people have actually gone into a voting booth and put an X by their names all over the country. And not one of them is competent enough to be foreign secretary. Not one.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
I said similar on a video earlier. I was like, you know, who was on the rejected list? Like, if the one that you decided on was David Cameron and he's not even an MP, like, who else did they consider and reject? Because, like, here's the thing about this. The thing that kind of weirds me out about it is, this is not a guy, like, the way that they're marketing it to everyone today, the way that Cameron's communicating it, and some of the sort of right-leaning journalists, is that, oh, well, he's got loads of experience, so he's an asset to Rishi Sunak's team. He's a quote-unquote moderate, he's centre-right, and he's got this breadth of experience, Graham. So that's why he's been... I'm like, this, like, don't fucking, like, sorry, I should watch my language. Like,
no, you can swear. It's the whole point of the swear jar.
There we go.
I just have to put money in the swear jar every time you do.
Oh, right, okay. I mean, I don't want to bankrupt you. It's hard enough making a living out of it, right? But it's like, it's not like he's some sort of battle-worn MP with a career trajectory that encapsulates, you know, he did, like, the way they talk about it, they make it sound like he was defense secretary, and then he did education secretary for a couple of years, and then he was home secretary, and then previously foreign secretary, and then finally he became Tory leader, and then he became prime minister. He's got this depth of experience. That is complete rubbish. He was an MP in 2001, and within like 4 years, he then became Tory leader, and he had one shadow cabinet post in that time as education. So he's not some battle-worn cabinet minister with loads of experience. That's just not the case.
And I've made a quick list of all his achievements when he was in power for 6 years. Okay, I'll finish my list.
Right.
Good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What did he do? Well, you could argue marriage equality, but more Tories voted against it.
That's a definite thing that you need to highlight. Yeah.
Yeah. Labour voted for it and the Lib Dems voted for it. Had they not done that, it wouldn't have got through.
Yeah. The way I always like to, the way I always like to articulate that is that, like, it got through. We legalized gay marriage in spite of the Conservative Party votes, not because of them.
Yeah. They didn't want to do that, did they? It was a little bit reluctant.
Do you remember some of the like newspaper like articles and blogs and guest pieces? And there was that one guy. To be fair, I don't think he was a Tory. I think he was a UKIP guy who said that he wrote to David Cameron to warn him against legalizing gay marriage because like, and
Yes.
God would like look down on him. And then there was
Oh,
some floods like about 2 or 3 months later, and he was like, I
yes.
warned you, I told you about this.
Well, I think there was like the Bishop of York or somewhere who
Yeah.
this is years ago. He blamed. Remember those terrible floods in Tewkesbury?
Mm,
Or was it Tewkesbury or Tewkesbury? One of those two places that I've never been to. And there was a bishop of, I think it was York, who actually blamed gay people for the
really?
floods. And I was living in Australia at the time, and I thought it'd be funny. I wrote to him, to his email address, uh, suggesting that we put our money together and we get a charter flight full of gay people to fly to Ballarat in Victoria in Australia, because they hadn't had rain in like years, and basically
Sure.
the lake there, Lake Wendouree, had all dried up. So I said, if you
Yeah.
get a load of gays over, and then they can all have like a big gay parade and all bum
Well,
each
you could
other,
do like
and
you could
then
like meld it like where it's sort of a rain
the
dance,
rains
but
will
it's
come.
just like homosexual fornication
Sounds
rain
bloody
dance,
awesome, mate.
and
Count me
then the
in.
rain, yeah, yeah.
Admiral Awesome says, "Dudes, UFOs are real," which I wouldn't normally read out, but it was a super chat, so thank you very much, Admiral Awesome. And
Fair.
Emma Price says, "Lindsay Hoyle has questioned the appointment re-scrutiny, and this is to do with the fact that because Cameron, just to go back to Cameron for a moment, because he's not actually an MP, he's not allowed in the House of Commons.
Mm,
So
yeah.
how do they have a debate with the foreign secretary on
And
foreign
this
policy
is
matter? How can
this
he
is an
like stand up
interesting.
against his counterpart David Lammy in the Labour
Mm.
Party and explain what the hell he's doing? What are you playing at?
It's a similar situation to when, I mean, it wasn't quite as ridiculous as today's situation, but like I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was 2019, that election, where Zach Goldsmith went back into the fold because previously he had stepped away from the Conservative Party over the Heathrow expansion. I believe I'm remembering that correctly. And then for the 2019 election, he came back into the fold, but he was unsuccessful in
Yes.
that election, and so he was effectively booted out. Like, you're not elected, you're no longer an MP. And I
Yeah.
think it was Boris Johnson who was like, nah, you're all
Sorry.
right. I'll
Yeah.
put you up in the House of Lords. And he was immediately reinstalled back into the cabinet. And everyone was
Yes.
like, oh my God, you can't even vote them out
No, you
anymore.
can't. You can't get rid of them. They'll just come back.
Yeah. And so
It's like a horror movie. And
this
David
is a
Frost as
similar
well.
situation.
David
Yeah.
Frost. I mean, that was the ultimate bit of trolling, wasn't it? So Boris Johnson told us to get out of the EU because then everyone would be happy, right?
Yeah.
Everyone, the Remainers, the Brexit, everyone would be happy if we left the EU, 100%. And he made the guy who, after whinging about unelected bureaucrats telling people what to do, he actually made David Frost appear and put him in the cabinet as
Mm,
the guy to negotiate our Brexit deal with the EU. So the guy who
yeah.
negotiated our deal when we left, the most important trade deal with our most important and profitable trading partners, he he put an elected bureaucrat in charge. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, that is a massive fuck you, isn't it? To
And we
us,
should
the
probably
people.
highlight as well, David Frost then latterly ran away from his own deal, like threw his arms up in the air, ran away from it, left
I
everyone else
hate
to
it.
pick it up,
I hate it forever.
and then proceeded to write Telegraph articles about how ridiculous the deal was. It's like, you negotiated it. You don't get to like
Yes.
criticize and throw a tantrum about it, idiot. Um,
But I was saying earlier, wasn't I, about like if it's a good job we Brexited, because then only half the population would be unhappy, whereas now literally everyone's unhappy. Lord Cruddas, is it, of Shoreditch,
Cruddas, I think, yeah.
actually tweeted today after Braverman was given her marching orders by phone. But by the way,
Oh, that's cold.
it was by phone, and I hope that it was by text message, and I hope
I
that
hope
it
it was
said,
Phil Collins style, like
"Welcome,
fax
welcome
it.
to Dumpsville, population." You. But yeah, she was
Yeah.
gotten rid of. But yeah, Lord Cruddas was saying, "That's it, Remain of one."
This whole
Like,
idea,
oh great, we're back in the
man.
EU. Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? That thought did inhabit my mind earlier, where I was like, this is weird. Like, so Sunak is there and he claims that he's a Brexiter, but everybody always has these suspicions that he's not. Um, David Cameron was obviously a campaigning Remainer.
Just
who saw
about.
fit to resign after the result of the referendum.
Reluctant Remainer.
And it worries me that if there were a sort of Remain population within the cabinet dominating it,
Yeah.
to what extent would Labour be completely fudged if the Tories turned around and said, do you know what? We gave it our best. We've thought about it and we've looked at the polls. And we think for GDP, for everyone, like politically, electorally, we think it's probably a good move if we announce that we're cozying up to the single market again. And the polls would go crazy because everyone would be like, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. This is really muddying the waters now. You get all the home counties, shires types. You'd be like, finally.
I don't think they're going to do that before the next election. You mean in opposition?
I agree. I don't think they will do it because I think the tabloid reaction to it would be too toxic. But yeah, I think maybe in opposition.
But also,
right.
I mean, I don't trust them as far as I can spit out a live rat. Do you know what I mean? Like, I would not be...
Great expression. Yeah, I've heard that one a lot.
I would not. I think I nicked it from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But I wouldn't trust them. I just wouldn't trust them, even if they said we're going to take you back into the EU if you get re-elected. I still wouldn't vote for them. I can't. Not after that. Not after 13 years of absolute bullshit. And it pisses me off that people just don't take. So I swore a couple of times. People just don't seem to tackle them on TV or on the radio. There was some dickhead on the Andrew Marr show on LBC earlier, some Tory dickhead, and he was going on about how we hadn't, made the most of the Brexit opportunities. And Andrew Marr just went, oh, yes, very good. Thank you, Minister. Thank you. And he didn't say, what opportunities, you twonk? Yeah. That's what I would have said. Like, explain them. Now, come on, name them all. Now, list the opportunities. Well, there's Japan. You mean that place that we had to deal with that was better than the one we've got now when we were in the EU? Yeah. Canada. Oh, you mean the one that we had to deal with? Oh, okay. Australia, New Zealand. And you go through them all. And then they ran out. There's only about 5 countries that are worth having a trade deal with outside Europe. 5.
Yeah. I mean, I always look at it, and I'm sure you don't want this to... I'm sure you don't want this to descend into another Brexit debate sort of thing, but I always look at it like trade-wise, you're just going to get a better deal if you've got a bigger market. So that's just a fact of life, right? And then geopolitically, you're just going to be safer if you're part of a geopolitical bloc in a world where everything is moving in blocks. Like if you're not part of a bloc, you're going to get pushed around. Yeah. So just on those two bases, like...
And the idea we're going to get an amazing deal from America on our own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We'll get a better deal on our own than we would do if we were in the EU.
Yeah.
And it's just like... Anyway, Freckle Puny, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Cameron cast a spell to summon Thatcher from the depths of hell. He only got the spell half right, hence Cameron. Or it could be an AI PM gone wrong. Well, it could be AI. You never know.
Honestly, Awesome... Half the Conservative Party is so batshit now. Like I truly believe that if they dug up the corpse of Margaret Thatcher, a good chunk of like the ERG hard right lot would vote for that as the leader. That's how nutty they've got.
Like salad fingers, and they'd be like, "Oh, Maggie, you look delightful tonight." Weirdos. Anyway, Admiral Awesome, thank you very much for the super chat. I've seen Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster is real, and the Tories are cyborgs. There you go. Well, I can't argue with the last one. Fair enough.
There you go.
Theresa Coffey, this is from Jazz. Theresa Coffey got the boot too. Sadly, not a concrete one in the North Sea. She's back trying to thwart Danger Mouse again now.
Yeah. What a huge loss to modern politics that is, that Theresa Coffey is having to step down from her role.
She's no longer Environment Secretary. What will the environment do with itself now?
Well, last time I saw her on the morning rounds, she was up in a flood-hit Midlands or Northern town, like feigning feelings, like trying to look really trying to look like she gave a hoot, and failing spectacularly.
And then she said that the wind came from the wrong direction.
Yeah.
The problem is the wind. I mean, when it comes to trees falling down, yes, there is something to the fact that trees tend to buttress themselves against the prevailing wind. So if the wind comes the other way, yeah, it can make the trees fall over. It's got nothing to do with what, like rain? I mean, what? Are the bits of
No,
the hills where the rain doesn't normally hit, and because the wind was coming another way, it hit that side? I mean, oh man.
there's
Anyway,
such chances though, aren't there? Like any sort of problem that right, it doesn't matter if it's a flood, doesn't matter if it's a cancellation of HS2, collapse in polling, whatever the scandal is of the day, they they will dance around the obvious truth or the obvious answer to it as much as they can and just throw out a gaslight here and a
yeah,
distraction technique over there. And
yeah,
like, I mean, clear, like, so with the flooding thing, the obvious answer or backstory to it is that they've underfunded various infrastructure problems that would, projects that would be able to capture flood water and drain it out successfully, right?
yeah.
But they can't say that. They can't say, "Oh, we've underfunded it, and we funneled all those millions off to our friends, like with contracts and donors and everything." So instead, they have to come up with this ludicrous, like, "Oh, the wind blew the wrong way."
The wrong
It's
leaves
the
on the
wrong type
track.
of wind.
Do you remember, like, British Rail got the piss taken out of it for years, didn't it, for having the wrong leaves on the track, the wrong type of leaves or something like that?
Wrong type of
And
snow. It was,
wrong type
yeah,
of snow.
yeah.
You know, like I'll talk in a minute about this, but questionable of abstinency, absanity, questionable absanity. £5 super chat. Thank you very much. Tory cyborgs cleverly does look like a little like Bernard Lowe, Jeffrey Wright from Westworld, the TV series, not the movie
Mm.
with Yul Brynner. Yes, he does actually. And then Emma Price, thank you very much for the super chat. For fuck's sake, we have an anointed PM and an anointed Foreign Secretary. General election now. Hopefully, the public realise what opportunists they are. Not my government. I hate them. Thank you very much, Emma. And I agree with you. I hate them as well. Something that I've talked about before on the Labour Social and maybe chatting to Phil is the fact that, I travelled around the world. I might have mentioned it. I spent a lot of time on cargo ships, and it's quite fascinating. Like, the captain of the ship is always the one who's on the hook for anything that goes wrong. They don't even have to be on the ship at the time. They could be in the
Mm.
town, and the people on the ship could get drunk and start a fire, right?
Yeah,
And it would be the captain's fault, even if they weren't even on the ship, because it's their
yeah,
ship. So
yeah,
if when you're coming into a local port, a local guy will come out, a pilot on a little boat, come alongside, climb onto your boat. It's quite exciting, especially if the water's quite choppy. And they'll go up to the bridge and they will guide your ship in. If he guides your ship into a bunch of rocks and your ship explodes, it's the captain's fault. It's not the pilot's fault,
mm.
because the captain should say, "Hey, that's not right." If a seaman hasn't maintained the paint store or something, and some rags go on fire, that's actually the captain's fault, because the
Yeah.
captain should A, make sure that his ship is shipshape and Bristol fashion, and B, make sure that his crew are doing their bloody jobs. And
So
this
is
is
this
something.
you? Is it like you're going to tie this back to what Sunak not showing leadership or
Yes,
David
yeah,
Cameron?
all of them, all of them.
Right.
It's like whenever something goes wrong, it's never their fault. Oh no, it's
Mm.
because of this, it's because of that. I mean, if something goes wrong on their watch, it is their fault, because the buck stops with them. Trump was
But
terrible for this. He would never accept any of his problem or any of the stupid things he did went
yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
That went wrong, like his wall or something. It was like, oh, well, it was his fault, and it was his fault.
Well, there was that really
Pathetic.
great quote, very revealing, in the run up to the American midterms, where they said, if the midterms go towards MAGA candidates, then presumably you'll take credit for that. And he was like, yep, yeah. And if the midterms go away from MAGA candidates, you'll have to take responsibility for that and show that, actually maybe it's time to step up. And he was like, no, if the MAGA candidates aren't successful, then I think that's down to like each of them. Like it was total
Yeah,
sociopathy.
yeah.
It's like, no, if it's good, then it's because I'm great. If it's bad, then that's all you guys. Like,
So what do you think? How do you think this is going to go down then? Do you think that Andrea Jenkins is going to get anyone on board with her batshit insane letter that she wrote?
I wouldn't have thought so, and I haven't heard any other sort of mumblings about like 1922 letters. Like, it's possible that, like, I can't imagine she would have put in that letter alone, just to sort of show where her principles are. I think it's
Yeah,
more than likely there's probably about 2, 3, 4 of them, but I don't think it's going to come to anything. I think they know that they're going into a general election. And actually, what this all is Rishi Sunak trying to rebrand desperately. I think he probably would have reshuffled anyway, like as we got nearer to the GE. I think the Suella Braverman conduct of the last 3 or 4 weeks has probably hurried that along a little bit. And I think this is him rebranding and trying to put a new sheen of privately educated, posh sounding, professional looking politicians up front and center as they start going into campaign mode. I think that's all this is.
Well, yeah. That was Suella. Well, Suella Braverman was probably educated. I don't know if she came across quite well. But yeah, apparently the wrong type of snow. It's David Farrow correcting us here. It was too powdery, so it got through the filters into the electric traction motors and shorted them out. There you go. I learned something today. And then Paul is pointing out Esther McVey as a cabinet office minister. Yeah, so now she's the she's the common sense czar. She's the minister of common sense, and her job is to stamp out wokery wherever she finds it. What the fuck? Is this real? Is this real? Is this a piss take? Am I living in the Truman Show or something?
Well, isn't that indicative of like that's where they see the GE campaign going, right? Is like sort of more culture war nonsense.
Up to a point today, it looked like he was trying to be serious about running the country and growing the economy and getting down those NHS waiting lists and all those things, right?
But like, bear in mind,
he goes, no, but woke.
yeah. But like, go back to 2019 election, right? So they get in, stonking majority. He puts Jacob Rees-Mogg in the cabinet and gives him the role of Minister for Brexit Opportunities, because that was the political climate at the time, was like all about Brexit. Let's find opportunities. It's possible. It's just around the corner. Christ is coming. And then now we are heading more. Yeah. Now we're getting closer and closer to the 2024 general election. And to their mind, the political climate is one of culture war. So it makes perfect sense in Tory world that they should have a minister that will be put on the rounds, that will be up in the House of Commons, that has to talk about woke and diversity training and how we're all too sensitive and snowflake. Like, it's complete rubbish. It's like, what? Like, what is this person actually there to do? They're literally there to go on Radio 4 today and then say that we're all too sensitive.
Yeah.
Like, what a job.
But like to have that role thrown in does seem to me like just a little bit of a sop to those lunatics, the lunatic fringe, the red wall. But the thing is, as Phil said earlier today to us, he went, the Tories have spent the red wall Tories have spent time getting money from central government and spending it on their constituencies. They might be doing all right, but they didn't. They just spent the whole time peddling these bullshit culture wars that no one gives a shit about. Like, there was a poll as like the most important policies that people are facing, and like trans people using the wrong bathroom wasn't even listed. Do you know what I mean? It was so low below the NHS, education, the cost of living, the war in fucking Gaza. I mean, it was like all these things, and it was just like, oh, you bothered about this? No, it's not. Does it come up a lot? I don't know.
It's a common misconception, and I feel like it's quite insulting towards the working classes to pretend or act or campaign as though the things that they care about, the things that real working people care about, is trans women using the bath. This is what they're just saying what everybody else is thinking. It's like, no, like if you look at the polls, if you look at actual things that like working class people are concerned about, it's exactly what you would think. It's almost identical to what middle class people are concerned about. They care about their bills, they care about energy stuff, they care about petrol getting more expensive, food inflation, their rent, their mortgages, like all of the nonsense is so far down the list, as you've just like alluded to a second ago. It's insulting that it's sort of caricatured, like, your mate Gary down the pub, he wouldn't care about his mortgage or his bills, Graham. All he cares about is blah blah blah,
But I think Just first of all, thank you very much to Helen for the super chat. Sunak makes long-term decisions, not useful ones. I don't think he makes long-term decisions. I think they're all short-term myself. I think he just thinks get him to the end of the month, the end of the week, the
Mm.
end of the day. And Admiral Awesome, thank you very much for the super chat. Make Elvis health secretary. Well, Elvis Presley was actually made an officer, wasn't he, of the alcohol, tobacco and firearms bit of the government, wasn't he?
Was he? What, in
Yeah.
the US?
Yeah. He was made like a US Marshal or something back in the 70s for
Did
alcohol,
Elvis
tobacco, and firearms.
did Elvis ever come here to the UK?
No, because Colonel Parker, who was his manager, who's played by Tom Hanks in the film, I think that he was a criminal. So it like basically, if he left the country, he might not be able to get back in. So Elvis never toured.
Ah,
I don't think he ever came to the UK.
just in the US, I guess.
He went to
Yeah.
Germany when he was in the army. I think he was posted in Germany when he was doing his conscription, whatever they called it, the draft.
Mm.
What's it called? National service. He was doing his national service, wasn't he?
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
only made him do that because he was like, too outrageous for the
Right.
conservatives back then, and they wanted to ban him. So they thought, oh, we'll ship him off to Germany for a few years to do his national service. Like
Yeah.
anyone else with that kind of money at that time just didn't go. Do you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
yeah, thanks, but no thanks. But yeah, I guess he was kind of lucky he didn't end up in Vietnam. Had things gone a little bit differenter, but yeah, Suella, a Ferengi in a wig, says Paul. So I don't disagree. Sarah saying the only long-term decision Sunak is making is to make himself and his family richer. And so yeah, this is what I think at the moment. Hey, do you know we're talking about the election and if there's going to be a snap election before Christmas, and it doesn't look like there's enough time. I honestly believe that they are just waiting. Oh, sorry, Sunak is just waiting until the India-UK trade deal goes through. Because most of his wealth is tied up in shares for Infosys, and those shares are going to shoot up in value when that deal goes through.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've wondered why. Like, is this job enjoyable enough for him to continue doing when it's so obvious that he and his wife really just want to fuck off to Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like all of their holidays are over in Silicon Valley. All of his interests, like look at who he spends his spare time with and who he
Musk.
wants to be. Yeah, who he wants to be pictured with.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Like, just fucking resign, or like call the general election, say that you're not the right person to be leading us into it and taking the Conservative Party forward, and then just fuck off to California. Just take your winnings, you've won, and fuck off.
Well, I'd wish you'd do that, but no, I think that his winnings are going to be he's worth 700 million at the moment, him and his wife, and I think that when he leaves the UK, he'll be a billionaire. Thanks to that trade deal. And that trade deal is going to be absolutely fucking awful for Britain. And it's going to be fucking awful for India as well. Not India, as in the country. It'll be good for India. It'll be bad for Indians because the EU has got quite strict rules about things like sweatshops. Do you think that's going to be included in a UK-India trade bill? Do you think this government gives a shit about poor people living, in northwestern India? I don't think give a crap.
Well, also it's it's something that will be hyped as a sort of Brexit success story, but I always think it's quite interesting that it is precisely the sort of trade deal that Brexiters will lose their minds about once they scratch beneath the surface, because it involves so much visa and immigration stuff. Like, it's like we'll do this for you and you do this for us. Okay, yeah, but also, can we just give our population like visas and they can just like come over and live and work in the UK for a bit? Oh yeah, absolutely. Anything for a trade deal. Like, once the Brexiters realize what a Brexit trade deal actually shakes out as, they're going to lose their minds.
Do you know who was holding that up as well? Suella
No.
Braverman.
Really?
For that reason, yeah, because she doesn't want people who look like her to come over to this country. Because
what a weird kind of. I mean, look, I'm something of an expert in self-loathing, but that is a new depth for me. Like,
she's just a horror. I mean, I'm glad she's gone. I can't believe that Sunak is so stupid that he hasn't withdrawn the whip from her. He had ample opportunity to do that as well, and said,
But
"You publish this thing in the Times. That is the fourth and final time you are going to break the ministerial code. You have brought our party into disrepute. You're having the whip taken away, which means that she can't mount a attempt to be leader, and she can't be leader after the next election because she won't get re-elected without her being on the Tory ticket."
yeah, well, has she broken the code 4 times? Is that right?
Yeah, 4 times.
It was the email, right? And
There
then
was the email. There was obviously the writing the article in the Times last week.
right.
There was the speeding thing where she asked her civil servants if she could get away with speeding. Oh no,
Does that break the code though?
Yes, it does. It does, because she's asked. It's a personal matter. She got caught speeding, and she's using people who are paid by the taxpayer to basically help her as Home Secretary, to help her with a personal legal matter, which was that she didn't want to take the speed awareness course in a group. She wanted to do it alone. And then there was one more, which someone in the chat will probably tell me. But yeah, 4 times.
Yeah.
I'll think of the fourth one. This is so many.
Yeah, I mean,
so
I
many
agree.
terrible things that she's done.
Like I was saying on Thursday or Friday, I was like, he needs to deselect her. Like, ordinarily, like I was not a fan of Boris Johnson, obviously, by a long shot, but specifically his decision to deselect so many of the moderates from the Conservative Party,
Yes,
with a view to then replacing them with batshit Brexiters, basically. And
they go hand in hand, those things, don't they?
Yeah,
being a Brexitter and being batshit insane.
And in that, in so doing, he then flooded the Conservative Party with sort of right wingers and like Desmond Swayne clones and people like Mark Francois, and I'm not sure like the Conservative Party will ever really recover from that, which is fine, you know, good riddance, fuck off. But I think now in this situation, I would be supportive of Rishi Sunak if he did say, yeah, look, I'm sorry, but deselected, bye. You know, why can't they reverse it and then have some set, like people like Anna Soubry? I'm sure that I would disagree with Anna Soubry about a lot of stuff, but at least you can tell when she's speaking that her brain is engaged, like she's in reality with us, at least. So what would be to stop Rishi Sunak from deselecting all of the lunatics and then replacing them with, you know, regular people?
Well, a lot of them wouldn't get in, would they? That's
would they not?
Well, because the loads of Tories are going to lose their seats in this upcoming election. So many people, so many of them are standing down because they know they're just going to get humiliated. Just want to touch on the super chat here from Captain Bart Roberts. Thank you very much, Captain. With the Elvis facts. Okay, you're sitting comfortably for the Elvis facts, Aid.
Yep.
Elvis was given DEA credentials. So that's the Department of Drugs Enforcement, isn't it? So it wasn't firearms and alcohol and tobacco, it was drugs. Here you go, Elvis, you're in charge of stopping drugs coming into the country. I think that was that like Nixon's war on drugs? Was that when he started the war on drugs over 50 years ago? Have they won that war yet? I don't think so. He touched down in Scotland for 12 hours or so. Didn't get off the plane, apparently, someone else has said. His manager, Colonel Parker, was a Dutch national and was therefore an illegal immigrant. That's why he couldn't leave the country. There you go. I mean, there was a reason involving the manager not being able to leave America, or he couldn't get back in.
And wasn't there some rumor about him that he was like an ex-Nazi or something bizarre? And that's why
I haven't seen the movie. I want to watch the movie, Baz Luhrmann's movie.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm taking us way off pieces. I'm so sorry.
No, we do this all the time. Look, I mean, Admiral Awesome has just put a super chat in saying Elvis is my milkman. So just don't worry about going off on a tangent when we're supposed to be talking about Esther McVey as the czar of common sense. Take us to your leader, say the aliens when they come to Earth. Or we'll take you to this woman here. Who's this? Oh, this is Esther McVey. Oh, what does she do? She's the czar of common sense. And she's there, like it's like an episode of Star Trek, isn't it? Oh, I'm oh my god! Oh my
it's god. like when they do stuff like that. Yeah, you're right. It just completely like pulls the rug from under anyone who had any sort of expectation that they were actually going to start to take this seriously now. It's like, can you just
It was like a year ago when Sunak got in And he started appointing, like, you know, reputable people into these roles in his new cabinet. And then at the end of the day, he made Suella Braverman. He gave her job back as Home Secretary, and I was like, oh.
Yeah. Only begrudgingly though. Like he had to do that, or he would have had the EI. Like he didn't have the support of that sect of the Conservative Party unless he gave one of them a cabinet role. And the reports were at the time that when somebody explained that, like the mathematics to him, he slumped his head in his hands and he was like, "Oh no, that means I've got to have Suella fucking Braverman." Like that was his reaction, reportedly, allegedly. And who could blame him? Like the whole time, she's been a fucking disaster for him, and they hate each other. Like, I don't know. It was like talking to you about this the other day, but I was rewatching her reaction to his speech at conference, and she couldn't even just put a happy face on. She literally sat there front row watching him doing this keynote, going, like slow clapping, like just not in it at all. I'm like,
oh man,
Jesus.
Okay, so what I would do if I was if I was Keir Starmer right now, I would appoint into my shadow cabinet a czar of common decency.
Right.
There you go. And what their job is to point out when people aren't being nice.
How's this? Right, I'll take that and then I'm going to run with it. I'm going to expand on it. If I was Keir Starmer, I would troll these motherfuckers by announcing a shadow minister for a return of honesty and integrity. That's what I
do. Brilliant. All right, Keir, we know you're watching. A return to what? Decency and honesty.
Honesty and integrity was what Sunak said. He was like his administration was going to be a return to honesty and integrity. So then if Labour announced that their shadow minister was going to be like labelled, that would be fucking beautiful. Because in the House of Commons, they'd be like, yeah, like I represent the thing that you say you were going to return to. So let's go through some of your like recent hits, shall we?
I love it. That would be absolutely brilliant. And what I'm going to find interesting now. So James Cleverly, the guy who proves nominative determinism is a myth, has been made the new Home Secretary, replacing Suella
Amazing. Braverman. What a great guy. Also just dripping with honesty and integrity is old Fact Check Cleverly.
Fact Check UK Cleverly. And he is, what we'll find interesting though, is he going to actually stand up in the House of Commons and debate with people over issues to do with the Home Office? Because one of the things that Suella Braverman is above and beyond everything else is she's a massive coward, and she used to send a junior minister into the House of Commons to debate with Yvette Cooper because she was too scared, too dishonest, too rubbish at debating to do it herself. And the only time she made speeches is when literally she just read off a bit of paper. That's when she said the tofu eating wokerati nonsense that was just scripted for her by her idiot, a speech writer.
Yeah, that was cringy.
Braverman, bloody hell! What a horrible woman. She looks like
this is what gets
Dobby
me.
the house elf as well, like evil Dobby.
This is what gets me with Braverman. So she's not a competent minister. We all know that. Neither, like in terms of being articulate and being able to debate well, but also like financially, like running that department. I've said this in a few of my videos, like the own goal that she scored a few weeks or months ago when she tried to recategorize. Oh no, it was her illegal migration bill sought to make it invite only, that you could claim asylum in the UK. Like you can't just rock up on the shores anymore, was the goal of this bill, which is now an act. And in so doing, she then removed herself from an international body's definition of offering asylum. And so then they missed out on £9.6 billion in aid. So then the Home Office were like running around, scrambling around, going like, where the fuck are we going to find that 9.6 billion? And the Treasury like, no, you made this mess. You fucking find it yourself.
Wow.
So she's financially incompetent, inarticulate. She's not, I don't think she's a good performer. She doesn't speak for a majority of people. She speaks for a tiny minority of the Conservative Party and even a smaller minority of the actual electorate. And yet, here is a person who has been rewarded again and again, like with that role, that one of the key offices of state. I think it's really interesting when you look at today's news about David Cameron being installed as a foreign secretary, because it shows you that both occasions, and this isn't just specific to Rishi Sunak, but he is a great example of it. In both those situations, he's taken somebody who is not qualified for that role, who isn't being given the role because they have a skill set that they could make the best of it with. They're not being given it for the good of the country. They are being given these roles specifically and exclusively because it's what's best for Rishi Sunak at that moment. And that's fucking disgusting, because it's like, don't people have a right to feel safe? That's what the fucking Home Office is there for, is to protect people, to punish people, to guard the borders, whatever you make of all of that legislation. That's the fucking brief. So can you just give it to somebody who knows what the fuck they're doing? You know? Rant over. I'm sorry.
That's a bit much to ask, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Don Dudat's got a good idea. The shadow minister for the Nolan principles. I really like that. Ernie makes a really good point, as always. Common sense has always been a bugbear term for me. It is the perfect way to disguise your most hateful and ignorant attitudes without owning up to it. That's why the fash always use it. Absolutely, 100% on that. James Cleverly, the most ironically named MP in the House. That's count down to power. And then, and Tox says, I picked the wrong day to quit bacon sandwiches. I like that. Topical and a little bit of an airplane reference as well. But yeah. I mean, this is a seismic event because we've been wanting to get rid of this horrible woman, Suella Braverman, out of the role of being Home Secretary for over a year now. A year of just, oh my God, she can't be this much worse than Priti Patel. Oh, actually, she is. I mean, do you think that Cleverly is going to double down on her anti-immigration bullshit, or do you think he's going to tone it down a little bit? Double down or tone it down?
I suspect he will continue that, like the same sort of rhetoric, continue to spin the same yarns about like how important it is to stop the boats and guard the borders and all of that stuff, because that's where their vote is sort of reliant on. It's on like center right and far right xenophobia, people who are, for one reason or another, scared about like invaders on the south coast, and it serves their purpose quite well. Like, they know how screwed the economy is. They know there's no money to actually invest in anything. The invaders of the south and like the stop the, but that is a useful narrative to spin for them. It distracts you over here. It gets you thinking about others. It gets you thinking about people getting a free house when you've got nothing and you're paying all this tax for it, and blah blah blah. The alternative would be that they actually tried to fucking govern. But I mean, what, 13 years deep? They're not going to start now, are they? And there's no money for them to start now. So this is what they have, is just xenophobia, fear, hate, continuing this stuff while they, through the back door, funnel out contracts to donors again and again and again, make the most of what they can while they've still got their fingers on the buttons. Yeah. I think that's all you're going to see, is like more of the same until the general election.
That's kind of depressing, isn't it?
I think my fear is that in putting someone like David Cameron in and putting this sort of, you know, arguably a sort of fresh sheen on and getting rid of some of the, like, I'm surprised they didn't bin Lee Anderson. But in putting this new sheen on the front, that you could make the case that at least superficially they are moving back to that sort of centre-right space. And my fear is that a lot of people see Keir Starmer's Labour Party as centre-right now. And what is that going to do? Is that going to muddy the waters in the polls a bit? Are you going to see a bit of a dip in Labour where some of the Shire's Tories will look at Cameron and Sunak and go, oh, okay, this is more like the One Nation Tory thing that I signed up for. So, okay, Labour seemed like a good option when they were going batshit over here, but now they seem sane again. So I'll go, do you know what I might, like, I think there could be something in that.
Yeah, I hope so. Shout out to Paul Ewan there for £2 super chat. Thoughts with Tan on her behalf. fuck the Tories. Thank you. And Cold War Steve has just posted this of Esther McVey. I'm going to put it on the screen for you. Esther McVey, woke finder general. Oh, it's
Nice.
very good.
I
Very,
love his
very
stuff.
good, Cold War Steve. Always
Yeah.
puts out great content, does our Steve. But yeah, although sometimes he's a bit like, do you remember the Far Side comics? The Far Side cartoons?
No, not familiar.
They were all, I think they stopped a little bit. No, actually, no, they probably, you should remember them. They had the famous one of the school for gifted, and there was a boy and he's pushing the door and it says pull on the door.
Mm.
No?
No, I'm not
No,
familiar.
doesn't it? Okay, well, Gary Larson, I think it was, drew these Far Side, and some of them were just a little bit. You had to really think about it to understand what he was trying to get at. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So suss out what the joke is. And I find Cold War Steve sometimes like that. You sort of looking at it for a while. Oh, I get it. Oh, yeah. Or sometimes
Yeah.
I just don't get it at all. I just go, yeah, that's cool.
You've got me really worried now because it's like I don't know if I'm really intelligent and I do just get it straight away, or do I think that I've got it, but actually I've totally missed the point. You know what I mean?
He could be quite subtle. No, it's when he does things like he'll do like a famous work of art, and he'll change it. I might not know that famous work of art because I'm not massively,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
au fait.
Speaking of art, right? I am going to take you on a tangent now. I went past a little art gallery today, and there was this like huge, but like maybe sort of, I don't know, 4 foot by like 6 or 7 foot canvas. And it's like really funky modern art with a bit of stencil and like spray paint and everything all over it. And me and my girlfriend we're like, that's fucking eye catching. That looks cool. And then I said, like, should we go in and see how much it is? Like, just like, I mean, it looked like a posh gallery. So I was just really like, it's going to be ridiculous. And then we'll just laugh at it. And I go inside and I said, how much is this? And she was like, oh, it's by Banksy's protege, some guy called Mr. Brown something. And it's £100,000. I was like, 100 grand. And she was like, oh yes, he's very popular. And then she showed us like a load of them. I was like, is this really like where modern artists are getting paid 100 grand for a painting? Like it's the only growth market in the UK. I reckon like.
But
Anyway,
you need to have the right connections, Aid.
Clearly.
Did you go to private school?
No. Why is that where all the artists go?
Banksy did. That's all I'm saying.
Really?
Yeah.
God, you know them all, don't you?
I do. Well, I've got a list, privateschoolmafia.com. We're almost at 700 now. I got to put an extra couple on today because I had to update everyone's jobs for the cabinet reshuffle.
Yeah, I mean, you can put my missus on there if you want one more.
I've got a few people. I know they went to private school. I don't know where they went, so I'll put them on anyway. But yeah,
I can't remember the name of my girlfriend's, but her brother went to Dulwich College, which I think was where Farage went.
That's where Farage went. Yep.
Yeah.
And they thought that he was a bit too fash for Dulwich.
Really?
Dulwich.
Yeah.
Yeah, Admiral Awesome. Thank you very much for the super chat. Suella Braverman, new minister for kicking puppies.
Wait, what do you think she's going to do now? Do you think she'll be actually quiet for a bit, or is she going to like rear up from the sidelines?
No, I think that she'll just, I don't know, eat puppies in an alleyway somewhere. I think that she's, but she might bide her time. I think she knows that the thing is, if she becomes leader now, if she becomes prime minister, that might be her thing. She wants to be prime minister for a few months, but when the Tories inevitably lose against Labour, touch wood, she'll be out the job because obviously she's not going to be able to keep the job after a devastating electoral defeat. So if I was her and just as evil, maybe not as stupid, but definitely as evil, I'll be like, well, I'll let Sunak lose the next election really badly, and then I'll slide in as leader of the opposition. Now, James O'Brien this morning on the radio said, well, that wouldn't be so bad because it would expose what a gobshite she is, and all those like the 20% of the population who think that she talks anything but nonsense will all be placated. But as Phil Morehouse often points out, we don't really want her as an opposition MP because, as leader of the opposition, because whatever she says will get into the newspapers and onto the news, right? Whereas Tommy Ten Names, if he stands up and makes a statement about whatever's happening, that won't get into the news. But if she does that, it will get into the news and it'll enter the mainstream, and that's quite dangerous.
I know what you mean. But I also think if she's so shit scared of debating Yvette Cooper and she sends her junior minister, like, wouldn't she be even more hopeless as leader of the opposition?
Oh yes.
Like
Oh,
in
she'll be
PMQs?
she'll be hopeless. But I mean, she wouldn't have to answer any of the questions, would she? It's a bit weird, isn't it? Because if you're a Secretary of State, you're kind of expected to explain what's happening in your department. Whereas if
Yeah.
you're Prime Minister, I mean, look at Boris Johnson. He never answered a straight question at all.
Yeah, that's true. Although I have some faith, and you can laugh at this if you want, but
Sorry,
I have some faith that when Keir Starmer is Prime Minister, that he will behave himself a little bit more prime ministerially, like in PMQs. I think if people ask him questions, I would be ferociously disappointed if he did the same dance that Boris Johnson used to.
Yeah. I find with Starmer, when he is taken to task on something that he doesn't want to answer the question on because he knows that the answer is going to be unpopular, he tends to skirt around it, and he'll have his like stock reply, and he can start sounding like a robot, set on repeat or something, and he'll say, "I've already said blah blah blah," and a lot of politicians do that, and it does wind me up. I'd much prefer a straight talking politician, and that's what people think Boris Johnson and Donald Trump are, but they're not. They are lying, and they're very, very good at lying because they've convinced themselves they're telling the truth. They honestly believe what the bullshit they're coming out with. They believe it.
Yeah,
because they're arrogant.
Yeah, that's what the sort of insiders have said about Donald Trump. It's like, oh no, he genuinely thinks that election was stolen from him, which is in some ways more terrifying, right? Like if it was all a scheme, if he was lying to exploit people, you'd be like, oh well, I mean, at least he's in charge of his faculties, right? But if he's not in charge of his faculties and he really believes a delusion, and then he becomes president again, then we really are in trouble. Not least because of some of the headlines coming out today suggesting that they are actively planning sort of detention camps for people who are seen as dissidents.
Yes.
Which is true fascism. Like, I mean, we are talking about, jailing people for not having the right political opinions.
There's a thing called Project 2025, and it's absolutely terrifying. There's a Wikipedia page about it. And one of the main things they want to do is incorporate the Department of Justice into the executive over in America. So the president will be in charge of the Department of Justice, and he'll get to tell the Department of Justice who he wants investigating and who he wants locking up and who he wants releasing.
Terrifying.
It's going to be really, really rough. And what Trump will do as soon as he gets in is he's going to pardon all of the January 6th insurrectionists, the Proud Boys that he told to stand by and, stand back, stand by. They've been locked up for 25 years, some of them, for their part in January the 6th. And he will pardon them. He'll get them out, and they'll be his private little thugs to go and beat up anyone who's different, anyone who's black, anyone who's Asian, anyone who's Hispanic, anyone who's gay, anyone who's trans. I mean, the fact that there are people who are part of ethnic minorities or a woman who are thinking of voting for Trump, it's like, he stands up and he says, "I will exterminate you," and you're like, oh, but he doesn't mean me. No, he does. He really, unless you're white, middle class, very wealthy, he's not interested, mate. He's not going to make your life any better. But he lets racists feel better about themselves, which is what Suella Braverman did very well for racists in this country, because they got to say, I can't be racist because I like Suella Braverman and she's an ethnic minority person. Like, okay, yeah, all right. So you want to let more people into the country and help them out, running away from war and famine and discrimination. No. God,
there should be like a word, like a phrase for that device where you take a person of color, the person of color says the sort of racist or racist adjacent things like multiculturalism doesn't work and white people have nothing to feel guilty about, and all of her hits that she came out with, that they say, you take a person of color that says all this stuff, and then you use that as your sort of like proxy racist mouthpiece. You know, like there should
Yeah.
be a less clunky way of describing that, because it's quite a
There's probably
common
words for it in
anomaly.
German.
Is it?
Probably. I got
Probs.
words for stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to the general election here next year because I think the Tories are going to get demolished. But I'm really not looking forward to the general election in America. I'm really
No.
shitting bricks about that because Trump, looking at the polls, Trump is disturbingly popular for a
Yeah.
man who has been found guilty of sexual assault,
Mm.
guilty of lying to the banks and defrauding the state of New York to the tune of $250 million. That's
Well,
not
he's
small
on.
change, is it?
Yeah, he's on the hook for $250 million. Like that's how much he'll have to pay to the court if he's found. I mean, they've already sort of decided that he's guilty, but now they're working out the depths to which he sunk, and whether he personally is liable or like if it was just the accountants or
Yeah.
whatever. But the actual fraud itself could go into like, you know, upwards, like nearer $1 billion. So it's, yeah, I mean, he should be exposed as a financial fraud. He's been found liable for the rape of E. Jean Carroll. There's all that grab him by the pussy stuff. He's still got his campaign finance money trial that's coming up.
Yeah.
The Georgia thing where he phoned the guy in Georgia and said, "You have to find me another 20,000 votes." All of these things are like it should be a slam dunk. Like this guy should just
I
have
think you'll
plug
find it was
pulled.
10,780.
Oh, was it? I'm sorry.
Probably. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Far be it from me to sully the good name of.
He didn't want
Donald
that
Trump.
many. He just wanted
Yeah.
one more than the other guy.
But yeah, he should like the Republican Party time and again have had ample opportunities to pull the plug and say, "You're not our guy. Like you can't run as a Republican candidate." And every single time they've just kowtowed, rolled back, abandoned plans to, because they're all so shit scared that if that senator or this congressman says, "I'm going against Trump," then you get this sort of army of MAGA nut jobs turning up at their campaign offices going like, "I love Trump, I love Trump." Like, well, I don't want to lose my seat, so I guess Trump it is.
Yeah. It's kind of embarrassing. John is saying in the chat, I've heard someone call the word you were looking for before, call it on James O'Brien, reverse colonialism. Could call it that. And Ernie's pointing out that Starmer won't need to lie like Tory leaders need to. That means he'll be able to take things much more straightforwardly. And I agree with that. What I'm saying is, if he's ever confronted with something where he obviously can't say something for whatever reason, he'll be a real stickler about it. Do you know what I mean? He's very much by the book. He reminds me of Tom Hanks in that movie where he crashes the plane and everything's by the book.
Yeah.
Miracle on the Hudson or whatever it was called. He reminds me of the pilot from that. He's very straight. He seems like a very straight guy when it comes to getting the policies done. And it winds me up when you've got people like what's his name? The guy who's always whinging about Starmer.
Owen Jones.
Owen Jones, that's him.
Yeah.
Saying, "Oh, he lied," and what did he lie about? Well, when he was trying to get elected, he said he'll do all these things, and he hasn't done them. And I'm like, well, first of all, when he said that he was going to do those things, that was before COVID. Before the invasion of Ukraine and before the bloody mini budget that made our economy melt down. And also, Labour Party, like any party, isn't a dictatorship. Just because Starmer is the leader doesn't mean that he gets to do everything that he wants to do. It's not like a magic wish list thing. He'll say to the shadow cabinet, "I want to do this," and they'll say, "Okay," or "No," or "Let's meet somewhere in between." And they have to take collective responsibility for their policies that they come out with. Otherwise, you'd have a situation where someone would do something wrong and then they'll blame it all on the captain. I mean the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And they'll have to stand down because one of their MPs did something wrong.
Like so the first thing is like when people say, "Oh, he said he was going to do this and now he's saying he's not going to do that anymore, so that means that he's lied." My first reaction is like, have you never lied to get a job before? I mean, come on, let's be real.
No, I would see it as not lying, as it's your... Okay, so I never used to think that, say, universal basic income was a good idea. Now I do.
Right.
Was
Yeah.
I lying back then when I said that I didn't think it was a good idea?
Right. So this is the second point I was going to say is like when you make these commitments sort of, 2, 3, 4 years ago, and then, as you said, like Ukraine, COVID happened, and it grossly affects the money that's in the coffers. Then you got, all the fraud money. You've got like what was it, like furlough plus the test track and trace app, like all of this expenditure that has to be accounted for. And now we're way further down the line, and somebody in the shadow treasury is like, look, if you want to nationalize the utilities, you're going to need about 200 billion. And we just don't fucking have it, Starmer.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do? Do you want to go out and tell people that you're still going to do it? And
Well,
then
that's what I was
next
gonna
week
say.
you have to row back? Or
Yeah,
like,
the Tories would say that they're going to do it. They would just
well,
lie.
they will. Yeah, they're going to start lying like even more soon because they know that they're not going to be in office in like
Yes.
6 months or a year's time. So they're going to, it's all the populism that you've seen over the last 2, 3 years. That's going to be amped up to the nines. They're going to start saying, this is our manifesto here. We're going to nationalize this and we're going to do that. And we can give you 10 billion for childcare. And we get like all of the promises that you could ever wish for to see in a manifesto from either Labour or Tories. And none of it will be credible.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I agree. Well, just a bit of good news. Emma Price, thank you very much for the super chat. I follow American politics. He won't get back in. Thanks, Emma.
That's reassuring.
Oh,
Right.
whew. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a bit worried then for a moment. And Nick is saying, as Phil said, just keep feeding Trump burgers, lots and lots of burgers and Coke, coming full circle to Elvis. Wouldn't it be absolutely fucking wonderful if Trump died on his golden toilet?
I mean, I'd like it. Yeah. It might be the first time I've ever masturbated over CNN, if that happens.
What the fuck? Aid, what? Why would
I'm
you
just
say
saying
that?
I would enjoy myself to something like that.
What, on the mental image of Trump on a toilet dead?
I'm just saying it would please me.
Come on.
Don't judge me. The heart wants what it wants, Gray. I have to go in a sec anyway, but that was a hell
I
of
know,
a
we gotta wrap up because it's past 9 o'clock. It's past your bedtime, mate. Thank
It
you
is.
so much
I
for
need to
doing
go.
this. I really appreciate it. Aid really did just step in at the very last moment to do the show tonight. So I'm massively in your debt. Do I need to come on your show? Do I need to come on the old pub?
Yeah,
pub
man.
politics?
I've got no. I don't think I've got a guest booked for this Friday. So if you're free this Friday, you could do mine, and then we could both jump on Labour Social afterwards.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Yeah, we'll do it. Let's do it.
Cool.
Let's book it in. So, what's your channel on this year YouTube thing? I'll type it in.
Yeah, so I'm youtube.com/@aidThompsin with an IN on the end.
Okay.
Or you can just Google me.
Yes. Okay, cool. I'm gonna put that in. Aid Thompson. Why could your parents not spell their surname?
It's a really long story. I'll bore you guys with it.
Tell us a story while I'm typing. I'm a slow typer.
It's long and it's not even that interesting. But I promise you that when Graham comes on my show on Friday, I will go through it again.
Oh, do you know what? I fucked that up. I should have
done
it. Don't click on that. It won't work. I missed a slash out. Oh mate.
Excuse me.
God,
but yeah, no, this has been fun, man.
It's Thompson with a H, isn't it? Like the Thompson twins.
Yeah.
Right, let's just delete that. Remove. Go on. Remove. Message retracted. There you go. Right, and before we go, I just want to give a bit of a shout out to the fact that me and a couple of friends are setting up a run to go to Ukraine at the end of just randomly Ukraine at the end of the month to deliver Lego to a few children's centres in Ukraine, and we'll be starting out on the 27th or the 28th, I think, of November. But if you want to follow the journey and if you would like to chip in to help buy some Lego, because we're taking them over as toys for Christmas to the kids over there, go to uk4ukr.com and there's information there how to help us out, and also sort of, read the blog as we go along. We're probably going to live stream it as best we can. But back in the day, Aid, when we were part of the EU, you could just use your phone anywhere in the EU. It was great days. And now you can't. Bastards. My volume keeps going down. I don't turn it down. It just automatically goes down. Sorry if people couldn't hear me. Right, hey, thank you very much for joining us for the swear jar. Take care.
Thanks,
I'll see you on
guys.
Friday. All right, and
See you
everyone else,
soon.
hello, good evening,
Cheerio.
welcome, and goodbye. Bye.